Yeah, let's rock and roll.
All right.
Let's do it.
Hi, everybody. It's Tuesday Night Live with Chiro Destiny, Rick and Brett here. And we have a super special guest. Sometimes you get to reflect back on your career and you look back. And I was in my office, it's got to be 15 years ago, when this sort of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I think just started chiropractic college, or maybe didn't even yet. I don't know. Maybe you were just in college going to chiropractic college. And there was this one, you ever know like that whole bobblehead on the dashboard guy that's just super happy, super positive. And like, I don't know what this kid is, but I love him. His dad's a chiropractor. He's all spizzed up. And I'm like, listen, you grew up near my town. He's like, as soon as you're out of school, you got a job no matter what. And the rest is history. I'll let Matt sort of tell you his version of the story. But Matt Westheimer, welcome to Tuesday Night Live. Thanks for joining us. It's great to see you with that beautiful hair of yours. I'll give you a chance to tell everybody the history, but you're finally back in the States. So why don't you take us on a quick little tour of what you've been up to over the last 10 years or so?
My gosh, I feel like it's been 10 lifetimes over the last 10 years. Yeah, I mean, I still remember when I used to come into the office before I started chiropractic school, shadowing you around and seeing just what an incredible place, the energy. And I knew that eventually someday I wanted to either be a part of that or try to create something like that. And so I went to school. I came when I was visiting. I used to always stop by the office whenever I got a chance to. And then I had this dream of practice overseas. So I had an opportunity going into my last year of chiropractic school to practice in Scotland. And it was going to be an awesome practice. It was pretty much all set up. I was going to finish my last 2 months of chiropractic school interning in China. And then after, pack up my stuff and head to Europe to go work. And I remember that it was right before I left China, I get a phone call from the chiropractor and he said, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. So I called him up in the middle of the afternoon and he said, I apologize, but something happened with my associate. I had to let my associate go and I have to get another associate immediately. I can't wait 3 months for you to come over here. So now I'm going to China. I'm getting ready to graduate, over $150,000 in debt. At this point, I think I had 3 figures to my name. I already gave up my car because my lease was up. It was a lease. I didn't have a car and I had no idea what I'm going to do. So I'm over in China with a laptop that barely worked, trying to figure out what my next step was. And I was going through a program at the time and I said, I'm going to start my own practice. That's what I'm going to do and figure it out from there. So I started emailing every successful chiropractor that I ever knew from school and asking them, what advice do you have for a new grad coming out of school and how to be successful? Where should I start? What should I do? And the email that I remember the most was the email that I got from Rick. And it said, don't make any decisions. I'm taking you out to lunch when you get back, figure it out. And I just trusted that process. I just said, okay, I'm going to do what he says. He's created something amazing. He must be doing something right. So I remember we went out for lunch, talked to me about working with you for a couple of years. And then we started, and it was an incredible experience. We can talk about, so much of who I am today goes back to the experience that I had working in your office.
Did I pay for lunch?
I remember what?
Did I pay for lunch?
Of course, I had no money. I couldn't afford to take you to lunch. I was going for the free lunch. You sold me on the associateship though. So then when it got to a point where I needed to make a decision, we were looking at potentially me becoming a partner, me opening up my own office, or there was an opportunity to go practice overseas again. And I was really struggling with this decision for months. I wasn't sleeping. I was super stressed out and I was trying to figure it out on my own. And then finally, after one day, at the end of the day, I caught you at the back door. I said, I'm really struggling with something and I would love your advice. And you say, shoot, go for it. And I said, I really want to either open my own practice or I want to travel around the world and go overseas. And you said just one question, like after months. I should have been smart enough to ask you this earlier. It would have saved me a lot of heartache and a lot of stress. But you asked me one question. You said 15 years from now, when you're married, you have a successful practice, are you going to look back and say, man, I'm glad I'm celebrating my 5th year in practice? Or are you going to say, this is an amazing 12th year in practice, in my own practice, but I really should have taken the opportunity to travel around the world and live out my dream, even though it's scary. And I didn't even have to think about it. Like that night, I made the decision, I'm going overseas. And I ended up going over to Singapore over Thanksgiving weekend and made the decision 6 weeks later, sold everything, packed everything, and with 3 bags moved over to Asia and spent 6 years over there practicing.
So Matt, what made you decide that you wanted to go overseas in the first place? What was the draw? What was the allure of that? Because a lot of people,
yeah, it's a great question.
Like scared to even get out of their comfort zone. I remember when I was teaching at Life University, you sat right in the front row, eating it all up, and I knew you were going to be successful. But it's interesting when Rick told me, I remember the story, said he really wants to go to Asia and then ends up in Singapore of all places. And I was just so curious as to how you wound up there in the first place. What was the draw to go?
Yeah, so ever since I was a little kid, like my parents always told me I was a 7-year-old kid living in a 50-year-old Mandy, because I was always worried about the future, like always worried about what my next was. Like I had my life planned out when I was probably in middle school. I had my whole future planned out, and I was worrying about my future at that point. And I had everything laid out. And then I went through a big transition in my life in chiropractic school. And it was personally, it was a really difficult time for me. It was a whole process of self-discovery and figuring out who I was. And I said, you know what? I lived my whole life having everything planned out, and things didn't work out the way that I envisioned them when I was younger. So why don't I, instead of going what feels comfortable and just following the path that I felt like I should be going down, why don't I ask myself, what is it that I really want? And what I really wanted was, I wanted adventure. I wanted to meet different people. I wanted to experience different cultures. I wanted to, Robin Sharma talks about this. I think it's Robin Sharma or Tony Robbins, about the rocking chair test, which is like to live your life in a way where you get to live it twice. When you're living through it, and then in the rocking chair at the end of your life, looking back on it saying, man, I did everything that I always envisioned and dreamed of. And I didn't want to have any regrets. And I remember I was talking about being scared. I was terrified. And I remember I went to a Saturday Night Live in South Florida, like a week or two before I left for Singapore. And I was really scared that I was going to go over there and things weren't going to work out, and I wasn't going to be successful, and I was going to struggle. And maybe I'd even need to come back early because things didn't work out. And I was terrified of failing. And I remember one of my mentors gave a speech that day because they called me up to do an impromptu talk. And I talked about going overseas. And he just stopped in the middle of his talk. He said, Matt, I need to acknowledge you. I am so proud that you're taking this risk going over there. It's something so few people would do. Yeah. Even if you go over there and 6 months later, it's everything fails and falls apart and nothing works out and you have to come back, I could not be more proud of the decision that you're making to go do that. And it was that moment that gave me permission to just completely free myself of that fear of failure, or feel the failure and do it anyway, and just go over there and just live fully. And it worked out great. And I loved it. I loved the experience over there and had some incredible times and met some incredible people.
So while you're over there, now you're over there, and this incredible adventure, you get there. You said you were there for 6 years, right?
Yeah.
What would you say in the 6 years were your top 2 or 3 lessons that you learned being in a foreign country, practicing chiropractic differently in a foreign country? What were your top 2 or 3 lessons that you picked up that you can share with the audience tonight?
I would say number one, just put your ego aside and humble yourself to always be a student. I went over there, had incredible mentorship with you, with Rick, with so many people that I surrounded myself. I went over there as if I knew absolutely nothing. Just from scratch. I didn't know the culture. I didn't know the business. I didn't know how things ran. And so I went over there, for one, just totally humble and willing to start from scratch and just learning and absorbing information. And then the second thing is like literally just having a heart of service. like going over there. I went over there with nothing. I was living in an abandoned house for the first month, no hot water. Like I woke up one morning and there was construction outside. I literally, because the house, we were going to have to leave the house because it was getting demolished to build up a bigger house. There was one where I woke up to a jackhammer outside my window and I sprinted out the front door because I thought that house was literally coming down and they forgot to tell us. So that first month, like, I didn't know anything going over there. And so just really being humble and then just having a heart to serve. And I wanted more than anything to make a difference there. And because they didn't know about chiropractic. And I wanted to share chiropractic with a group of people that had no idea what it was and to be able to shape the idea of what chiropractic was in a new part of the world.
So why Singapore? How did you wind up in Singapore of all places? Just because you had
So it actually happened. One of my best friends, Matt Horkey, we were in school and we were supposed to go to China together. And he ended up not going to China. He went to Bali instead. And this is actually really funny. So he went to Bali, did the mission trip there, got connected with the guy in Singapore. And when I graduated, no offense to Rick at all, but I'm going to work every day, working in plantation in the office. And I'm talking to my best friend, Matt. He's bouncing back between Singapore and Indonesia and talking to me about the beaches in Bali and, opening up new practices in Indonesia and just the opportunity that was over there and the adventure that he was having. And that was the impetus to making Singapore the decision as opposed to somewhere else.
Plantation, Florida is not good enough for you, that guy?
I mean, plantation is wonderful. Don't get me wrong. But it was Asia seemed a little more exotic at the time.
So as I would speak to you constantly throughout your years in Singapore, number one, because we're friends, and two, because you were having such this experience of educating people to a profession that they don't really necessarily understand and know, but they weren't medically oriented, right? It was what was the culture like? And as you started to be able to formulate what you wanted, you got placed into your own practice and you had to build this thing and grow this thing, which you did beautifully, which we'll talk about. But what was the culture like from a chiropractic knowledge standpoint? And what did you do grassroots, patient by patient, to start to educate them? What were the things that you thought every single man, woman, and child that walked into your office needed to know in order to make good healthcare decisions for chiropractic?
The biggest challenge going over there, well, two things. Number one, what was the challenge was that they didn't know anything about what chiropractic was. So even just the idea of, like, I told them I was a chiropractor and they didn't even know what the word was at the time. Now it's much well known there, but at the time where I was, they didn't know anything about it. So I had to start with a base level of knowledge. Like, think chiropractic back in the 1930s in the US, it was just starting out. But I thought that because it was Asia, it was going to be very holistic and very much like non-medical, into being proactive with their healthcare. And it actually wasn't like that at all. It was as much, if not more, medical than the US. So wow. Even traditional Chinese medicine, everything was about treatment of symptom. And if you were symptom free, you were healthy. And if you had a symptom, you made natural methods like herbs or patches, but it was always about just getting out of pain, how you were healthy. And people would come in, they'd go to the doctor all the time, and people would come in with bags of medication. And so it was a really interesting process educating them. And so the challenge was, in the beginning, I started when I went to go look, it showed me where my office was going to be. And it was called Video Easy. It was basically like a Blockbuster over in Asia. But all it was, like, I walked into it when it was still Video Easy. It was 100 square feet. If you spread your arms side to side, you could practically touch wall to wall. And it was really long. And it was like a long space. And so I remember when they said, they're like, this is where your office is going to be. I'm like, where's the rest of it? Like, it was just a hall with like DVDs along each side of the wall. That was it. And so when I started over there, we got a really good start. It was very busy in the beginning. And it was a combination of pure passion, understanding the education of a day one and day two, and how to communicate the value in day one and day two. And then what I would do is once they then committed to a certain amount of care, whether it was a month or a 4-month care plan that they would commit to, my belief that once they went to the day one, day two, and then the new patient orientation, and they were like, I told them everything. Like I shared the entire story, like from beginning to end, DD to 2010, whatever I was over there. Like I shared everything during that period of time. And every visit, I was adjusting and adjusting and adjusting. And then I got to the end of their care plan and I'm like, all right, so let's do a re-exam. I showed them their old x-rays. I showed them their new x-rays. And I'm like, all right, let's talk about where we need to go moving forward. And almost every one of them in the beginning was, what do you mean? I thought we were done. I'm like, what do you mean you thought we were done? I was like, don't you remember what I told you 4 months ago? When sat down together and then never acknowledged for the last 4 months. Like I was seeing it every day and I grew up in it. So I just expected that they were going to understand it. And so that was a massive eye opener to me that relationships are not done in a day one and a day two. They're started in a day one and day two, but every single visit is like, if there's a patient on a care plan, I still look at every single visit as a pay-per-visit that I need to sell myself to them and create that deep empathetic connection and build value every single visit, whether it's the 3rd visit, the 27th visit, or the 127th visit.
I think a lot of chiropractors make that mistake. A lot of people think that I've told them once, they'll know exactly what's going on. I think that's why people don't do healthcare classes. They don't do patient education properly, not visit by visit. And here you are, when they say, if you were the last person, on earth, could you rebuild the chiropractic profession? Could you rebuild the philosophy to really help people get well? In essence, that's what you had to do because you went to a country, they never heard of it before. So kudos to you for doing it, but a lesson to be learned by everybody. It doesn't matter where you are, right? What part of the world, but kudos to you for actually making it happen. And valuable lesson.
Right. So were there specific things along that patient education after day one, day two, that as you started to get really good at it, that you knew were your linchpin things that patients, once they understood, made more of a lifetime chiropractic decision?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a certain thing that they tell you, but it's kind of the whole process. Like the way I looked at it, the way that I look at it is almost like in a dating, like in a romantic relationship. It's like throughout the entire process, like every visit, you're looking for these little things. You're building that trust more. You're building that connection more. You're getting them to understand more value of what it is that you do and finding out deeper, getting them to trust you more so they can share more of what's important with them. So they see it more as a part of their whole life. But the strategies, like the processes that I would go through to get to that point was always by the end of like the 3 to 4 month re-exam. And so one and day two for sure. Then day three, going through how to be a great patient. What are the responsibilities that they have in order to make it a partnership? So there's some there's empowerment there. And then then you have the new patient orientation and then 12 visit re-exams. So those 12 visit re-exams, a lot of chiropractors, they do those re-exams because it's important for insurance. Like, oh, let me just get this information down so I have it for the insurance company if they ask for it. But to me, that is an incredible touch point. It's like in this, at the 12 visit mark, in this doctor-patient relationship, you're sitting down and you're like, hey, Rick, how am I doing? How do you feel like you're doing? What goals have you met so far? What goals have you not met that we can continue to work on? And so you can continue to add value in what's in the best interest for the patient, as opposed to just what the doctor believes. And I think that's the problem that a lot of doctors have, that I had, and I fall into even sometimes, which is, what do I want to tell the patient? What do I feel like they need to know? They're on my curriculum. No, We work for the patient. Like, we need to look at what is it that the patient wants and how do we communicate our value in terms of a way that they can understand it. So 12 visit re-exam, then 24 visit re-exam, same kind of a thing, building on that. And then 36 visit comprehensive re-exam, x-rays. So that way you can really make sure exactly what progress you've made, find out what expectations and agreements have been met, and then what new ones you want to moving forward so they continue to get better and protect that investment.
So was there a language barrier, or did you have to kind of work around that? Or, when we talk about describing chiropractic, educating patients, people are using all kinds of different props and so forth. Was there a language barrier that you had to work around and do other things, or?
With some patients, there were some that only spoke Chinese. There were some that only spoke Malay, because there's 4 national languages in Singapore: English, Chinese, Malay, and Tamil, which is South Indian. But almost everybody, because it was an English colony for a while, almost everybody speaks English. But some of the older generation, they had the choice of going to Chinese school or going to English speaking school. And so some of them needed to be translated. And that's a good question, because, even though there wasn't a huge language barrier, there was still a culture barrier. 100%. So I couldn't just talk and just communicate the same way. I had to read body language and to see, because I was by myself for a while in that office. So I had to read body language and see, like, is what I'm saying making a difference and getting through? Are they understanding what I'm communicating, or do I need to communicate it a bit differently? And I don't know if we want to do it, but what the biggest pivotal experience I ever had with communicating in terms of the way that people can appreciate it and understand it was, I was in Rick's office. Should I go into that?
Please.
Okay.
We still have.
So I had my scripts and all my information for day 1 and day 2. And I was really focusing on my day 2 on being able to communicate the value of chiropractic, what it is, where we were going, what their problem was, how we would be able to help them. Mm-hmm. And I went through that thing and memorized it inside and out, forwards and backwards. Like, if you're like, what's the line on page 7 on line 12? Like, I probably could have recited it to you. And so I asked Rick, I said, Rick, do you coming in and observing me? I want you to coach me and to see where I can improve. I had no interest at that time of seeing how he could help me improve. What I thought at the time was, I have this thing mastered. I'm going to blow Rick out of the water. He'd be so impressed. He's going to high five me. He's going to give me a hug. He's going to say I'm the greatest chiropractor ever. He's going to want me to coach all of his clients. Like, I had this huge ego that I had this thing down absolutely pat. Right. So I brought him in, I deliver it, and it was as good as I ever hoped that it could have been. I delivered it with as much passion and enthusiasm as I ever could. So we finished, we walked her up to the front, Jen actually over at the front desk. And then Rick, come to the back with me. Let's debrief. And I'm walking back like super proud because I didn't mess up a single word. And he just we go in there. He looks at me with this straight face. And I know this is a clean show, so I won't use the exact words that he used, but he just looks at me straight in the eyes and he goes, "What the was that?" And I was like, "What do you mean? That was good, right?" It's like, "Good?" He's like, "That was horrible. How did you not realize how horrible it was?" I said, "I thought it was great. I thought I crushed it." He goes, "That's the problem. It was all you. You had this little old lady practically cowering in the corner, terrified of you while you're screaming at her and spizzing all over her. And she's terrified of you, but you could care less because it was all about you and what you had to say." And it was, I mean, as you can see, I mean, it's stuck with me now for 11 years. I remember it like it was yesterday, but it was from that moment forward that totally transformed the way that I interacted with people. And I always made sure that I had anchors to put myself aside and make it all about the patient. What does the patient need? What are their goals? What's their energy like? What do they need from me? And how can I provide that to them in a way they can receive it?
So in so doing, how do you know then, because I know Rick said you built your practice to about, I want to say 500 a week. Is that right? While you were in Singapore?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. How do you know then when patients were actually getting it or not?
When continuing care, when
Answer.
people, I mean, yeah, when people were like, when I would give them recommendations and I would let them know where we're going, and then we're getting to these touch points, and they're like, because for me, I wasn't lying to them, I wasn't manipulating them, I wasn't trying to sell, I wasn't trying to overpromise something and then under deliver. I was real honest with, this is where we're going, this is what we can expect. And so my feeling is like, if you're going to want to continue care and pay for it, they have to, they're not stupid. So they have to be getting more value than what they're paying for.
And it was 100%
it's a
cash,
really good question.
right?
Yeah, it was 100% cash. Yeah.
At $70-something a visit.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe like 50 something US dollars at cash for the care. And I would say the biggest thing was every single visit. This, you know how we talk about process goals or like numbers goals.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at a process. So literally every single patient, every visit, if I saw 100 patients in a day, every single visit, I would take a moment afterwards before the next patient and think, what could I have done better? And what did I not do to them that I should have? And I did, and I still do that. And I even do that with my wife, even today. Like now we'll go out to dinner with a new couple or we'll meet some new people and we'll talk about chiropractic. We'll just talk about life in general. And after every one of these conversations, I always ask her, I say, so how did I do? Did they feel heard? Did they feel like I connected with them? Did they feel valued? Did they feel like they were important? Did I talk too much? Did I talk too little? Did I talk too loud? Did I ask them enough about their life? And we'll debrief on every one of those conversations. So that was a big process for me, and still is today with all of my interactions.
So I want to take a little shift because after you left Singapore, you put everything in storage and left and just traveled the world for I think a year and a half with your now wife, Jen, who we've met. I had the opportunity, Robin and I met you guys in Paris. We got to tour the Louvre together. It was the best. Got to visit my favorite painting with you. So since you've come back, I know you're opening in Charlotte, but you've been doing your podcast for quite a while, not only doing some of your own writing, your own stuff, but also interviewing some real powerful people. Tell us a little bit about the podcast and some of your biggest lessons and some of the things to share with the audience on sort of the biggest linchpin info that you've gotten to have courage, conviction, strength, the fortitude to now move forward into your own practice.
Yeah. So with the practice, I mean, with the podcast, one of the reasons why I started it was because I remember, and it was actually at a super conference years ago, I met John DeMartini there. And I asked him, I waited in line for what seemed like forever. And I wanted to ask him, what do I need to do to become a speaker like you someday? And I was looking for this because he's always found from the stage. And I was looking from this really deep, profound answer. And I waited in line ever to talk to him. And I asked him that question. And his response to me was this: just speak as much as you can. That was it. Like, I was like, and? He's like, that's it. Just keep speaking as much as you can to as many people as you can. And I found that the amount of opportunities that I had to speak publicly, I wasn't getting the level of growth that I wanted to. So that's when I thought about starting a podcast. I'm like, it gives me an opportunity selfishly to work on my own communication skills. It forces me to the information that I'm reading and learning and have to integrate it internally and own it well enough to communicate. And if you want to learn how to communicate well, start a solo podcast, because the first time you pick up that microphone and you're staring at the wall in front of you and you have to talk for 8 to 10 minutes in a cohesive manner and an organized manner, it's going to freak you out. Like, it was so hard, but it forced me to really get to boil down my message and to communicate more concisely and more effectively. And then having the opportunity to bring on, see, that was another kind of a selfish thing as well. Cause it was like I felt like it was weird. If I just, let's say I don't know Brett and I've never met him before. I'm like, hey, Brett, can I take you out to lunch just to pick your brain? It's like, I don't know that I have time, but it's like, hey, Brett, I have a podcast that I want to introduce your message to my audience and your audience. It was a vehicle to not only be able to have these incredible conversations with amazing people, but then be able to deliver that information and impact more people in the process.
Tell us what's the name of the podcast so I can post it.
It's called The Ultimate Achievement Show.
Nice.
And so it's a combination of some solo episodes and then also quite a few interviews. Like I have an interview I'm posting in this week where I interviewed, she's a world record holder in triathlon, and she's a professional triathlete and a running coach. And she actually had an injury recently where a free thing, she blew out her knee at the peak of her game as a professional athlete. She blew out her knee, had to have reconstructive surgery, and she had to start back from scratch. So getting able to talk to people like that and to extract some of the lessons and the life lessons that they learned has been really, really cool.
That's fantastic. So, we're towards the end here, and just a couple of quick questions for you. You have the ear of the profession, let's say. You've been to Europe, you've been to Singapore, now you're back in the States. Are you open in Charlotte, or you're about to? We're
in process of going for permits soon.
Okay, so you're in process. That's going to happen as well. Where do you see the profession going from here?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I think that, to be honest with you, I think that we're at a crossroads now. I think that, a lot of people say there's never been a better time to be a chiropractor. My dad's a chiropractor for 41. And ever since I was a kid, I can hear people saying that. And so every year there's never been a better time to be a chiropractor. And so I don't know about that, to be honest with you. I think that we're definitely at a crossroads. Things are changing a lot with insurance, with the profession. The profession is very fractioned. You have, the people that are going more medical. You have the more straight chiropractors. You have people that are kind of in the middle, and not enough people are coming together. And so I think personally that as a chiropractic profession, if we all don't, at least no matter what side you sit on, if we don't come together on the principle of chiropractic and subluxation correction and start it about the people that we get the opportunity to serve instead of our own agendas, and we come from a heart of service while keeping the principle of chiropractic first and foremost, I think we can really steer the profession in a really powerful direction. But it's going to take a lot of work, and a lot of people are going to have to come together and do that. So I think the next 5 or 10 years are going to be really pivotal for that experience to determine which direction we're going to be heading.
And where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
I see myself taking care of patients. I miss it. I mean, traveling around the world for a couple of years, I did some coaching with clients overseas and a handful of people here and there, but I miss getting my hands on people and adjusting. I love coaching, and I love helping chiropractors too. I have such a passion for that. And so 5 to 10 years, I see definitely a couple of practices, 2 or 3 practices, associate doctors, a great team, and just being able to help more chiropractors become successful.
And my last question, fantastic. My last question is, what advice would you give to chiropractors that might be stuck at a plateau? Maybe there's a little fear about what's going on in the world today. You've seen it all. You've kind of been through it all. What advice would you give to a chiropractor that's just stuck, that just wants to finally just break through and get to that next level?
Yeah, how much time do we have left?
Couple minutes.
I'll keep it short. I think number one is finding your passion. This is not an easy profession. I mean, it's not this socially accepted thing that people are run to and knocking down the doors for automatically. You have to develop thick skin have to develop an incredible passion of service and a passion for chiropractic. And this is unsolicited. There's no affiliate fee or kickbacks here, but I think hiring an incredible coach to guide you, like, both Brett and Rick. I mean, both of you guys are like, it seems like at least on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, I'm asking myself, what would Rick do? What would Brett do? How would they handle this situation? And so hiring a coach, because, a lot of people, you don't even know what you don't know. It's that whole being unconsciously incompetent is where so many people start and so many people stay for their whole careers. And so having somebody, whether it's a mentor, a coach, or a colleague, that's going to be able to see your blind spots and to be able to help direct you in a way that you can't do it on your own. I think those two things, finding your passion, because with passion, I learned this from Rick and Larry and you, the be, do, have. If you see yourself as successful and you develop an incredible passion, then you're going to do the things that are going to allow you to have things that would make you successful in the physical realm. And so developing that and then having someone on your team that's going to help to empower you, motivate you, and inspire you to do those things.
And you started off by saying that the big thing for you was getting out of your comfort zone. Even though you were afraid to go overseas and do what you did, you had the value system of, I want to experience adventure, different culture, and you were willing to step out of your comfort zone. I think a lot of chiropractors play too safe and they stay in their comfort zone, and we know that's not where the growth is. So kudos to you for doing that. And then you said before, as you mentioned now, humble yourself, have a heart of service, and find your passion. Those are some key lessons for people to implement. So I want to applaud you for that. I know Rick has some parting words as well.
Well, I mean, listen, I look back and I have this stupid smile on I'm like staring at myself with this stupid grin on my face, like a proud father. Right. I'm not old enough to be your dad. Maybe like an uncle. I don't know. It's an older brother, maybe something. Throw me a bone. When we look back, when Brett and I speak and we see docs like you in your, I think, mid 30s, late 30s, whatever it is, we know that the profession's in great hands, right? Because you get it. You have the big picture. When Brett and I are at, talking rocking chairs before, when we're sitting in our rocking chairs thinking back and we hear some of the answers and we hear you recite some of the belief systems and the knowledge that you got through us, that we got through our coaches and mentors, it just perpetuates the laws of success, the philosophy of chiropractic, the ability for us to serve as many people as we can and help people that are struggling or having difficulty, to help them see greater successes as well. So obviously I'm super, super proud of you. Always been blessed to have you as a colleague. And most importantly, I think that for those of you who are watching, if you can see the enthusiasm, by the way, you're still yelling at everybody. You're coming through the screen. It's the best. Still like loud. It's hilarious.
That's who he is. He's being authentic. I love it.
The first healthcare class he did, he comes back. I'm like, why are you yelling at all the nice people? So but the enthusiasm, the passion, it comes through every pore in your being. So I'm so excited for you to set down your roots and open up. And for those of you who are watching, this is what success looks like, right? It can't be same old, and it can't be just, oh, woe is me, and little baby steps at a time. Sometimes it's jumping off the cliff. Sometimes it's jumping into the deep end and not knowing what's on the other side. And again, you embody everything about growth, success, unlimited potential, possibility thinking. And we just love and admire you, bro.
Well, I gotta thank you guys for a lot of that, because you've been incredible role models over the years.
So listen, when you have, the passion, yes, I love how you built relationships, which is a key component here. And you let the passion shine through. Forget about numbers, forget about money, that comes as a byproduct. First and foremost, as you mentioned before, you're all about service and making sure that people understand where you're coming from and meeting the needs of the person in front of you by understanding who they are, what their value system is, and being able to communicate in such a way that they hear you based on who they are. So a lot of lessons here for everybody to learn. Good luck in the new practice. We know you're going to do great, just a matter of time. Check out his
Thank you.
podcast, obviously. And again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Another wonderful Tuesday night. So many lessons. And so on behalf of myself and Rick and Kimberly and Debbie and Larry and Chiro Destiny and all of our members, we can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your experiences and your willingness to, do what you did and get out of your comfort zone and make it happen. And now you're back in the States and you're going to turn a lot of people on to what we're doing. And you know what? This profession needs more people like you.
No doubt about it.
And we love you for that. So everybody have a wonderful night. We'll post this as well.
Yeah, we'll see you again soon next Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Good night, everybody. Thanks, Maddie.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
You're the best, bud.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.